My fiancée mocked my late father at our engagement party, so I ended it on the spot and left her shattered in front of everyone. I'm a 29-year-old guy, and my dad was my best friend. Not in a cheesy way, I mean it literally. He raised me on his own after my mom died when I was 6. No help, no breaks, just a man who worked double shifts as a mechanic and still found time to pack my lunch, show up at every school recital, and teach me how to tie a tie when I was 13. Even though he never wore one himself. He had those rough, grease-stained hands and a voice like worn leather, but God, he was gentle. He'd say things like, "Life's gonna hit hard, kid, but your job ain't to swing back. It's to stand." That line stayed with me longer than I realized. He never made a big deal out of birthdays or milestones, but he showed up. Every single time. When I graduated college, he stood in the back row in his faded jeans, clapping louder than anyone else. I bought him a new button-down for that day, but he still wore his old denim jacket. Said it made him feel like himself. 2 years ago, I held his hand in a sterile hospital room as the machine slowed to a crawl. Lung cancer. The kind that doesn't ask for permission. I remember whispering, "You did good, Dad. You can rest now." And then, he was gone. Since then, I've carried his photo in my wallet, still talk to him sometimes when I'm stuck in traffic. And now, with my engagement coming up, with all the flash and fuss Rachel's family is planning, I can't help but wish he was here. Not just for me, but to meet her. I wonder what he'd say about her. About us, and for some reason, that thought has been sitting heavy on my chest lately. Met Rachel at a networking event for young professionals, the kind with overpriced cocktails and people pretending to love being go-getters. I was there for a friend, mostly just nursing my beer and counting the minutes until I could leave. And then, she walked in. She had that kind of presence that made the room slow down, confident, radiant, way out of my league. But somehow she came over and started talking to me. Not just surface talk either. She asked real questions about my work, my life, my dad. When I mentioned that I was raised by a single father, she leaned in closer and said, "I think that's incredible. You must be so grounded. It threw me off." Most people flinch or offer some awkward pity when they hear about my upbringing. But not Rachel. She said things like, "I bet your dad taught you how to be a real man." We started texting that night. 1 week later, we had dinner. 2 weeks after that, she introduced me to her friends. They were all lawyers, consultants, finance bros, and then there was me. Logistics manager, public college grad. I showed up in a thrifted blazer feeling like an imposter. But Rachel never once made me feel small. She'd laugh at my corny jokes. She'd say she liked how real I was. "You're not like the other guys I've dated," she'd say, resting her head on my shoulder. "They talk about money and mergers. You talk about loyalty, family, life." And I believed her. I believed she saw something in me that went beyond status. Looking back now, I don't know if she really admired my roots or just liked the story I came with. But back then, I thought I'd found the real thing. The first red flag came quietly, the kind you wave off because love makes you generous with your excuses. We were out one night at this hole-in-the-wall pizza spot I loved. Greasy booths, cracked jukebox, the kind of place my dad and I used to hit after long days. I was telling her that story, how he used to let me order soda only if I got good grades, and Rachel just smiled tightly and said, "Babe, we can afford better now." "You don't have to cling to the past," I laughed it off. Thought maybe she didn't mean it like that. But later that night, when I showed her photos of the old house I grew up in, small, one-story, paint chipped on the porch, she wrinkled her nose and called it quaint. Like a historical shack. She said it with a little laugh, like a joke. But it didn't land like one. There were other moments, too. I once brought up visiting my dad's gravesite together. I said it'd mean a lot. Rachel hesitated and then said, "That kind of thing just drains me. I want to remember people alive, you know?" Again, said gently. But the message was clear. She didn't want to go. I told myself she was just sensitive to grief. That maybe death made her uncomfortable. I didn't want to push. I figured everyone mourns differently. But that night, as I sat alone on the edge of my bed with my dad's photo in hand, I realized she had never asked what kind of man he really was. She admired the idea of him, not the man who raised me. And somehow that felt worse than not caring at all. The moment we got engaged, Rachel's family took over like they were planning a royal wedding. Her mother called the morning after I proposed. already rattling off venues, florists, and something about a signature champagne fountain. I hadn't even caught my breath yet. I thought it'd be a small thing, something intimate. I pictured us saying a few words, maybe lighting a candle in honor of my dad. But they had other ideas. "This is our daughter's big moment," her mom said. "It needs to be elevated." Rachel seemed thrilled. She started talking about chandelier lighting and ice sculptures. I stayed quiet, smiled where I was supposed to. We toured venues, each one more ridiculous than the last. One had a live harpist just for the appetizers. Another came with valet drivers in tuxedos. I kept doing math in my head, each number stabbing at the one thing I was holding on to, a trip I'd planned for months. A solo vacation to my dad's hometown, the one we never got to visit together. I had saved for it. I wanted to walk the streets he grew up on. I wanted to feel close to him again, but instead I took that savings and dropped it on a deposit for a venue I couldn't pronounce. Rachel squealed when I told her, hugged me tight and said, "You always come through for me." She didn't know what I gave up. And I didn't tell her, because deep down I just wanted her to be happy. But part of me wondered, if my dad were here, would he tell me I was confusing love with sacrifice? The night before the engagement party, both families gathered at an upscale restaurant her parents rented out for a private dinner. It was all dim lighting, marble floors, and cutlery that looked like it cost more than my childhood bike. I wore the nicest suit I owned, but still felt like a guest in someone else's world. Rachel was glowing, laughing with her friends, swirling wine in her glass like she'd been born doing it. I tried to relax. I really did. I made small talk with her dad about weather and sports, smiled through her mom's commentary about elevating my wardrobe, and just kept my head down. Then came dessert. Someone asked what kind of music we'd play at the party. I smiled and said I had a short playlist, a few old country songs my dad used to love. Nothing dramatic, just something simple to start the night. Rachel giggled and said, "Oh God, you mean that ancient stuff your dad used to play? What was it, twangy banjos and tractors or something?" Her voice was light, playful. Then she added, "He probably would have shown up in flannel and boots thinking this was a barn wedding." Her friends laughed, loudly, and I smiled, weakly, pretended it didn't slice me open. But later that night, back in our apartment, I sat on the edge of the bed while she showered. I pulled out the small folded photo of my dad, the one I planned to tuck inside my jacket pocket at the party. My fingers trembled around it, and for the first time in a long time, I cried, quietly, because tomorrow was supposed to be a celebration. But now something already felt broken. The morning of the engagement party, I told myself to stop overthinking. I stood in front of the mirror, fresh haircut, new white dress shirt. Shoes shined so bright they looked brand new, even though they weren't. I told myself today wasn't about small jabs or unspoken tension. It was about love, about building a future. Rachel came out of the bathroom in her robe, hair in curlers, humming something off-key and carefree. She kissed my cheek and said, "Tonight's gonna be perfect." I smiled back, even though part of me still ached. I hadn't slept much. The joke about my dad played on a loop in my head, but I kept telling myself I was being sensitive. That grief makes everything louder than it is. In my inside jacket pocket, I carefully slid the photo of my dad, the same one I cried with the night before, and next to it, the small folded card I'd written my speech on. Just a minute or two. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to thank the people who helped us get here, and to honor my dad. I didn't tell Rachel about it. I wanted it to be a surprise. I thought maybe, just maybe, it would soften her. Maybe she'd hear the words and realize how much he still lived inside me, how much he meant. I read the card out loud to myself once before leaving the apartment. My voice cracked halfway through, but I steadied it. Told myself, "You've got this. Just get through tonight. It's your moment too." But somewhere deep in my gut, I couldn't shake the feeling. Not fear, not nerves, just this strange, hollow warning. She's not going to get it. The venue looked like something out of a movie. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead, violins played softly in the background, and waiters moved like shadows carrying silver trays of champagne. Everything was polished, elegant, and cold. Rachel looked stunning in her designer dress, laughing like she belonged in that world. And maybe she did. Her family filled most of the room. High heels, sleek suits, whispers about investment portfolios and ski homes. My side? A few loyal friends from college. My Aunt Lila, who wore a beautiful traditional dress she hand-stitched herself. I was proud she came. She helped raise me when Dad worked late shifts. But I caught Rachel's friends eyeing her, whispering behind manicured hands. One even stifled a laugh. I clenched my jaw and turned away. Midway through the night, Rachel's father raised a glass for a toast. His voice boomed confidently. "To my daughter, radiant as ever. And to her fiancé, a good, honest, hard-working man. Proof that with the right woman, even humble beginnings can lead to greatness." People chuckled and clapped. I smiled. But inside, I burned. I wasn't ashamed of where I came from. My dad didn't teach me to chase money. He taught me to chase character, to earn every inch with sweat, not shortcuts. But in that moment, I felt small. Not because of what he said, but because it landed. Everyone heard it as praise, not what it was, a dressed-up insult. I touched the photo in my pocket. My anchor, my armor. The violinist switched songs. Rachel twirled near the center of the ballroom, her laughter echoing louder than the music, and for the first time that night, I realized how alone I felt in a room full of people. When they handed me the mic, my palms were damp. My heart thudded against my ribs like it was trying to warn me, but I took a breath, looked out at the crowd, and forced myself to speak. I started with Rachel. Told them how we met, how she lit up a room, how she made me believe in love again after years of keeping my guard up. I saw her smiling as I spoke, hand gently resting on her chest, soaking in the praise. Then, I shifted. I said, "There's someone who isn't here tonight, but without him, I wouldn't be standing here at all." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the folded photo. My voice cracked slightly, but I didn't stop. My dad raised me alone after we lost my mom. He worked double shifts, packed my lunches, and showed me what it means to be a man. Not through words, but through the life he lived. I scanned the room. Silence. I wish he could see me now. Standing here, loving someone fully, trying to be the kind of partner he taught me to be. I folded the photo back, gently, like it was made of glass. There was a beat of stillness, then polite, scattered claps. I looked at Rachel. She rolled her eyes, not big, but just enough that I caught it. Her friend next to her leaned in and whispered something, and both of them stifled laughs. My stomach twisted, and then she reached for the mic. With that same glowing smile and champagne in hand, she said, "Let's all raise a glass to flannel shirts, dusty boots, and country songs. Wherever you are, Mr. Blue-Collar Dad." Her friends burst out laughing, and just like that, the air left my lungs. I barely had time to sit down before Rachel stumbled forward, giggling, the mic still hot in her hand. Her voice slurred just slightly, the way it does when someone's had one too many but thinks they're still sharp. She held her glass up high and said, "Let's all raise a glass to flannel shirts, dusty boots, and ancient country songs. Wherever you are, Mr. Blue-Collar Dad." The laughter was instant, loud, cruel. Her friends nearly doubled over. One even clapped like it was the punchline of a comedy set. I didn't move. I couldn't, my ears rang. The chandelier lights above suddenly felt blinding. Across the room, I saw my Aunt Lila freeze, her mouth slightly open in shock. She looked at me, not with pity, but pain. Gasps fluttered through the crowd. Rachel's dad chuckled behind his glass. Someone whispered, "Oh my God, did she really just say that?" Rachel didn't even notice. She was beaming, loving the attention, and I sat there with my father's photo still in my pocket, the same man who taught me to show up for people, to never humiliate someone, to be proud of where you came from even if the world wasn't. In a matter of seconds, the man who shaped my life became a joke at my own engagement party. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling, not from anger, but from heartbreak. The woman I was about to marry just turned my father's memory into a punchline, and I knew, in that moment, I couldn't let it slide. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the table. I didn't cry. I just stood up. The laughter died immediately. Like someone had cut the music. Forks stopped clinking. Heads turned. Rachel's smile faltered. "Babe, what?" she said, tilting her head. It was a joke. Don't be so sensitive, but I didn't look at her. I walked slowly, undeliberately, back to the microphone. My heart was pounding, but my face was calm. I took the mic, cleared my throat, and said, "This engagement is over." The words came out like glass, cold, sharp, final. The room went completely still. You could hear someone's champagne flute clink against the floor. Rachel blinked at me, her face flushing. "Wait, what? Are you serious?" She laughed nervously. "You're not actually mad, are you?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. I stepped down from the platform, walked past her stunned parents, past the crowd of people pretending not to stare. One of my friends clapped, just once. A single firm clap, then another, and suddenly it wasn't just silence anymore. It was whispers, gasps, a few more scattered claps, and Rachel calling after me, "You're ruining everything!" But I didn't turn around, because the only thing that was ruined was already buried 6 feet deep wearing flannel and still being mocked by people who never deserved to say his name. By the time I reached the parking lot, my phone was already lighting up like a slot machine. Rachel, her mom, her dad, unknown numbers. Paragraph after paragraph, her mom's voicemail hit first. "How dare you embarrass our family like that? After everything we've done for you. You ungrateful little..." I stopped listening. Rachel's texts came in rapid fire. First, in all caps, "You humiliated me." Then, "I was joking. You're seriously going to blow up our life over a joke?" Then a softer one. "Please just come back. We can talk about this." I didn't mean it like that. Each message chipped away at me. But none of them touched the part that mattered. I called my friend Nate, who had been at the party. All he said was, "Man, you did the right thing." That took guts. I didn't respond. I just drove. The roads blurred under streetlights, and the air in the car felt too quiet. Or maybe too loud. When I got home, I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't take off my jacket. I just sat on the edge of my bed, still wearing the weight of everything that had happened. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out the photo, my dad, smiling in front of the old pickup truck, arms greasy from work, pride in his eyes, and I just stared at it. Let the tears come this time, no shame, no noise, because for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't just mourning him, I was honoring him, and I think wherever he is, he'd understand exactly why I walked away. A few days passed. I stayed off social media, turned my phone on silent, and tried to rebuild a version of quiet. But the truth has a way of leaking through, even when you don't go looking for it. One of Rachel's old friends, a girl named Michelle who'd always been polite to me, reached out. She just wrote, "I'm sorry. You deserved better. Can I tell you something?" I called her. We talked for nearly an hour. She told me that Rachel used to make little comments about my background all the time. At brunches, group chats. Her exact words more than once. "I'm basically upgrading his whole bloodline. His dad was a mechanic. I'm marrying him into the 21st century. I didn't speak. I couldn't." Michelle said she always thought it was in poor taste but didn't know how to bring it up. She assumed I knew. I thanked her quietly, hung up, and sat there in the middle of my apartment, staring at the ring box I hadn't returned yet. That night at the engagement party wasn't a one-time slip. It wasn't nerves or too much champagne, it was her. That was who she was underneath the polished smile and curated charm. Someone who saw where I came from as something to fix, not something to respect. It hurt. Not just because I loved her, but because I had let her into the most sacred part of my heart, the part that still beat with my father's memory. But in that pain, I also felt something else, relief, because I realized I hadn't just escaped a bad moment. I had dodged an entire future built on silent shame. It was a rainy Thursday when she showed up. I heard the knock before I saw her. Soft, hesitant, the kind that wants to be let in but knows it might not be. I opened the door to find Rachel standing there, soaked from the storm, mascara running, clutching a small gift bag like it could undo what had been done. Her voice cracked immediately. "I was drunk. I didn't mean it. Please, just..." "Let me explain." I didn't say anything. Just stepped aside and let her in. She sat on the edge of my couch like a stranger in a home she barely recognized. "I've been thinking a lot," she started, "about how I spoke. About your dad. I crossed a line." She looked up at me with glossy eyes. "I didn't realize how much he meant to you. I guess I thought, I don't know. You'd get over it. There it was, not an apology. A justification. She reached for my hand. I didn't move. I can change, she whispered. I'll be more respectful. I'll tone it down. Just give me a chance to make it right. I looked at her. Really looked at her. The woman I once imagined a future with. The woman I defended, excused, believed in, and I felt nothing. No hate. No anger, just distance. Like she was someone I once knew in a different lifetime. I stood, walked to the door, and opened it. You didn't just mock a man, I said quietly. You mocked the man who made me who I am. Her face crumpled. There's no going back. And with that, I closed the door and didn't look back. A month after everything, I finally took the trip, the one I'd postponed. The one I'd silently traded away for champagne towers and rented chandeliers. I packed light, just a backpack, my dad's old watch, and the photo I'd carried through it all. The town was a few hours away, tucked between hills and farmland, the kind of place GPS barely recognizes but memory never forgets. I walked the streets he once called home. Gravel crunching under my boots, kids riding bikes past the same corner store he used to buy penny candy from. I could almost hear his voice pointing out landmarks from the stories he'd told. I found the diner he used to rave about. Faded sign, vinyl booths, jukebox in the corner still working if you hit it just right. I ordered what he always said was the best damn chicken fried steak in the state and sat by the window in silence. No noise. No texts, no damage control, just peace. After lunch, I drove out to the cemetery where his father, my grandfather, was buried. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with history. I laid down fresh flowers, said a few words I wasn't even sure I believed in. But it felt right, and as the wind picked up, I closed my eyes and breathed, for the first time since that night. I didn't feel angry, or sad, or betrayed, I just felt whole. Like I'd finally taken a piece of myself back, the part that never belonged in ballrooms or beneath chandeliers. The part that was raised in love, not luxury. It started as a whisper. Then a ripple. Then a wave. A week after my trip, a video surfaced, grainy, taken from a guest's phone during the engagement party. It captured the moment. Rachel's voice over the mic, laughing as she mocked my dad. My frozen face in the background. Someone posted it anonymously with the caption, "He gave a heartfelt tribute to his late father." This was her response. It didn't go viral in the millions kind of way, but it reached the right corners of the internet. Comments poured in, that man dodged a bullet. She really mocked his dead dad in front of everyone. Good for him for walking away. Rachel deactivated all her accounts within 3 days. Her polished image, the perfect poised girl from the right family, cracked wide open. Mutual friends started distancing themselves. A few reached out quietly, saying things like, "I didn't know she was like that." One coworker at my office patted my shoulder and said, "What you did took guts, man. You honored your father." That's rare these days. Even strangers started messaging me, people who'd lost parents, who felt like their grief was never respected. One woman wrote, "I wish my ex had half your spine. Thank you for showing us we can walk away. It felt strange to be seen, not for what I owned, not for who I was marrying, but for what I stood for. For years, I worried my dad wouldn't be proud of my choices. But now, I finally felt like the man he raised me to be, and everyone else. They saw it too. People always say, just forgive and move on. But sometimes, walking away is the most loving thing you can do, not just for yourself, but for your peace, your dignity, and the people who taught you what respect really looks like. I didn't walk away from Rachel out of spite. I didn't end things to hurt her. I walked away because staying would have meant betraying the one person who never betrayed me, the man who raised me with calloused hands and an open heart. My dad didn't have money. He didn't have influence, but he had integrity, and when Rachel laughed at him in front of 100 people, turned his memory into a punchline just to impress her crowd, I realized something. If I let that slide, if I stayed silent, I would be choosing shame disguised as love. So I left. And in doing so, I didn't just honor my father's memory, I protected it. I still wish he was here. I wish I could have called him that night, told him what happened, heard his voice say, "Proud of you, kid." But I think deep down, I already know, because he didn't raise me to be flashy. He didn't raise me to chase approval. He raised me to stand. And that's exactly what I did. So if you're watching this, and you're wondering whether it's too dramatic to leave someone who disrespects your story, your roots, your people, let me tell you something, it's not dramatic. It's called self-respect. Not every battle needs noise. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is leave quietly and never look back. That night, I walked out of that ballroom with nothing in my hands. But for the first time in years, I felt completely, unapologetically free.